is Wednesday, May 12th, 2021, 6 p.m. This Board of Commissioners meeting is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks.
Here.
Vice Mayor Price. Here. Commissioner Hodges.
Here.
Commissioner Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Hudson.
Here. Will you all join our attorney, Mr. Trask, in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance?
Heavenly Father, let us take a moment to thank our Heavenly Father for all that we have been given and for bringing such a fine group of dedicated citizens together today. I'm proud to be among you. We ask for your help to give our individual and collective gifts to our community, to regularly refurbish our intentions, to give of ourselves in ways that make a difference to our families, to our city, to our nation, to a world grown so small that it can be explored and conquered with the click of a mouse, to keep our wits during a time replete with distractions and political uncertainty, to maintain our focus with determination and with a sense of humor. For all of this and a few doses of good luck and grace, we give our thanks. This we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have Representative Cheney here with us tonight. She's not here yet, so we're going to move on to public comment. If there's any public comment on anything that is not on the agenda tonight, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello. My name is Donna Stasek. I live at 14001 Marguerite Drive, Madeira Beach, Florida. I have been here before. Yes, I have. Okay, I am coming back because I am not getting a resolve to this, and I am thoroughly disgusted. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis. I'm not going to go into a bunch of details. Okay, but this is ongoing with my problem to get my permit for my windows, which has just been going on at an interminable rate. Today is May 12th, as Mayor Hendricks just stated. We're all aware of that. Many of you know that we suffered a storm November 11th called Eta. I was a victim of that storm. That was November 11th, 2019. Okay. At that point, on November 14th, they were told, go ahead, file your paperwork for a permit, put ETA on it, which I did do. On November 13th, permits were waived and said to be expedited. November. December, 1 month, expedited. January, 2 months, expedited. February, 3 months. March, 4. April, May. This is May. It's 6 months. And 1 day. I don't call that expedited. I don't know if you do or if your definition of expedited is the same as mine. I had my flood inspection done on November 21st, 2019. It was processed November 23rd, 2019. I applied for my permit on the 11th, the 14th, the 15th, and the 21st of December. It was approved on the 20th. You had a young lady named Amber Savage that was in the office at that point, and she accepted it. Unfortunately, they didn't stamp it, whatever the holdup was, and put the seal of the city of Madeira until December 30th. Nonetheless, it was certified and stamped on December 30th. December, I spent most of the month evaluating contractors and getting estimates. I was told that I asked at that point, did I need more than one permit because I needed one for the roof and I needed one for the windows and doors, and was told no. Put it all on the same thing. Just make sure that it says ETA on that. It will be separated. Just supply us with the name of the contractors when it comes due, which I did. As soon as I decided on a contractor, I called. I talked to Amber. and gave her the name of both of the contractors. They later told me that the contractor for the windows was going to have to do a contractor's card, which they did do and submit as well. Everything sat. On March 11th, they put the permit outside my house for the roofing, okay? And the roofing was done. I was also informed at that point that the windows would be done the following Monday. I called to City Hall. Where is my windows permit? They said it's sitting here, right here on the desk. Go ahead. I waited. On the 15th, when they showed up, they asked...
Ma'am, you're going to need to wrap this up. We've got 3 minutes limit on talking.
Okay.
Go ahead and wrap up.
Just saying, this is going back and forth. I submitted and resubmitted. Basically, at this point, I'm still at a standstill. ETA has been crossed off. March 25th, all the documentation changed by DeSantis. DeSantis said he did the inspection. He did not. He lied. It was done by the contractor. I don't know. You take a test. You pay to take a test. You do your own inspection. How is that fair? So basically, at this point, as a result, and Mr. Hendricks told me, the reason and the purpose of the permit is to protect the homeowners and be sure the work is done correctly and per code. Mine was not. I hired an outside inspector to prove that. I have a report that can be submitted.
Hey, ma'am,
As a result,
you're going to need to go ahead and wrap it up.
okay, as a result of this and a failure to do his job, I am requesting the immediate dismissal of Frank DeSantis.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If we can go back to item 4 on the agenda.
Okay, you're right. I did miss that. Approval of the agenda.
Actually, I would like to make a motion to move the W&A cleaning contract to the consent agenda. We've received the numbers very properly given to us by Ms. Weffer, and with her good judgment and the passionate statements by Commissioner Hodges and Commissioner Andrews, I think I got everything I need to approve that, and I think I was kind of a holdout, so
Okay,
I don't think we need to discuss it. Put it that way.
okay, fine. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have one other change. Our fire chief is representing us at a meeting up in, I think it's Reddington Shores, one of the Reddingtons, I apologize. So I'd like to move his item, which is 8C, to the end of E in 8, and hopefully he'll be here by then. If not, we might have to move it some more. I indulge the commission on helping us with this issue.
Okay.
So do we need to make a motion for those two changes?
Yeah, it would be a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is the consent agenda. And we have that change, so
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is basically approval of the minutes.
And your change? Moving the WNA.
W&A cleaning contract.
Okay, and also moving the W8 cleaning contract to the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Okay, next is public hearings. First is ordinance 2020-24. City Attorney, will you read this ordinance into the record, please?
Yes, Mayor. This is ordinance 2020-24, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Madeira Beach to create a chapter to be titled the City of Madeira Beach Proportionate Share Development Fee Ordinance to regulate the use and development of land in the City of Madeira Beach, imposing a proportionate share development fee, impact fee, on land development and redevelopment in the City of Madeira Beach, for providing for improved municipal mobility facilities and services necessitated by such development and redevelopment. Stating the authority for adopting the ordinance, making legislative findings, providing definitions, providing for the computation of the amount of the proportionate share development fees, providing for the payment of proportionate share development fees, providing for the establishment of proportionate share development fee trust funds, providing for the refund of the proportionate share development fees paid, providing for credits and exemptions, providing for review of the proportionate share development fee schedule, providing for appeals, providing a penalty provision, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. That was the second and final reading of ordinance 2020-24 by title only.
Director Portell, I'm sure we all have some more questions since we've had plenty of time to go through this.
I like the way he slid that microphone over here.
Out of the hot seat.
That's right. For the moment. Yes, we have been addressing this for quite a while, haven't we? It's been coming up again and again, and we've had workshops on it, and it's been discussed by more than one commission configuration, but now that we've got some dollar amounts attached to it, I think people can get a better sense for what the real situation is, what the impact is going to be, both publicly and privately. And so this is the point at which you have to start making some decisions about how we implement this, if we do move forward with it, in a way that provides the city with the resource that needs to meet the new impacts created by expanded development, while at the same time operate in a way you feel is appropriate and fair. I'm going to let Jerry Murphy, he's here today with us. Again, he's been working on this all along and under contract with us through the University of Florida. And he's got lots of detailed explanation he can make because he does a lot of this impact-based stuff. And I'm going to turn that back over to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, Jerry Murphy with the University of Florida. This is the second reading of the ordinance, and so I'm pretty sure you're well acquainted with it, but I'm sure there's questions, and I'm prepared to answer those. If you want to do that first, we can do that. I do want to alert you to what the legislature has recently passed regarding impact fees, and it looks very likely from my sources that the governor is going to sign this bill, and so it will likely become law on July 1st. But I'd like to sort of answer your general questions first, then go into what this legislation may mean, and some further discussion about how you may wish to adopt the fees.
I have a couple of questions, Jerry.
Yes, sir.
One is, you know, this is based on square footage. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that square footage of the total square footage of a building, or is that air-conditioned area of a building? How is that calculated?
The fee is based on the square footage of the building in a column that the property appraiser uses for assessment called living area, and that is generally considered to be enclosed area under air. There may be certain existing properties, and maybe in the future, that do not have air conditioning. They would still be qualified if it's living space, but it's ideally considered, you know, generally that area that's conditioned air.
So if a building is demoed, whatever was there before, is that backed out of the impact fee?
Yes, sir.
That square footage?
So, for example, if you have a 1,000 square foot building that's going to be demolished and replaced and maybe elevated, With a 1,500 square foot building, the 500 square foot increase would be the only thing that would be assessed the impact fee.
Okay, thank you. And so it's not based upon the cost of a development at all? It's simply the living area?
It's the living area, and it's based on the valuation of the city's fixed assets in the pool for mobility. That's the ordinance that's in front of you. You will be seeing, depending on how things go, you'll be seeing in June an ordinance for culture and recreation and also public safety fees. The way we had organized this from the beginning was to do a major fee, the mobility fee first, and we were required to adopt level of service standards in the comprehensive plan, which required us to do a mobility plan, and that's all been going on for the last year and a half or so. That's all been done, and so now we were prepared to come forward with a mobility fee. Initially, we had tried to look at including stormwater service in that because your streets are the basic spine of your stormwater service, but you unfortunately or fortunately have a stormwater fee in existence. I would say that it does not closely relate to the costs associated with providing stormwater management, but that fee is there, and so until that can be extricated, we could not include stormwater, and so the mobility fee decreased in this final ordinance from what was originally proposed at $2.88 a square foot down to $1.50, and it's strictly relying on basically your streets and parking.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a few. Hey, Jerry. What's up?
Commissioner?
Okay, I actually read this, and scary enough, I understood some of it. You know, I'm all for fees. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'm all about bringing money into the city. But I guess, you know, we're kind of tasked with an interesting proposition up here. We got to balance, you know, taxes and spending with, you know, not trying to scare away potential, you know, responsible development, right? So we don't want to make these fees too outlandish where, you know, everybody's running for the hills. So my first question is more along the lines of that. I mean, where did we come up with these numbers from? Is there another city locally here that's using them, or are we the first one jumping into the pool here to see if these fees are actually kind of usable for us?
There's no other municipality or even the county on the barrier islands that is using this methodology. In fact, most of them don't have impact fees. There are a few that do. I won't name names because my contention would be that they are not using the most current available data as the statute requires, and have not updated their fees timely, but we don't want to throw anybody under the bus. The methodology that we've used is based on the fact that you're a built-out barrier island. You're not going to be seeing additional units. You're not going to be seeing additional development on green space. What you're going to be seeing, however, is redevelopment. And the experience over time, at least recent time, has been as new development and redevelopment come forward, the envelope gets bigger. As the envelope gets bigger, its capacity expands. And as its capacity expands, more people will occupy it, creating more impacts upon the community. And so the idea is to capture in a snapshot that we took back in 2019, using the property appraisers database, the total amount of land area that the city owns and has dedicated to public service, dividing that up into mobility, culture and recreation, and public safety, those three pockets, and then taking all of the fixed assets at their valuation for replacement and coming up with a number, and then dividing that valuation across the acreage, bringing that down to a square foot so that we've got a rough proportionality between the square footage of property, improved property, and the square footage of improved private property. And that became the calculation, the denominator. The numerator being the built private property enclosed square footage, and the denominator being the value of the city's fixed assets distributed over the acreage based on square footage. And that then becomes the calculation. So that's the $1.50 amount that we've come up with for mobility. And then that would be the charge for each additional square footage of development that comes onto the island, or into the city.
Okay, so kind of a little bit of a follow-up on that. So if we're is this going to change? Let's take the Cambria, for example. I think it's a good example of something recently that's been built here. The Cambria came in, we did some negotiating with them, and they, instead of paying these impact fees, because they weren't in place at the time, they came in and they did some road work for us, and they did a bunch of different improvements. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but $1.5 million worth of road work or something along the lines there. Is this impact fee in addition to our asks as far as that's concerned, or is this going to be, they're just going to give us the money and then we have to go about making the changes that we need to change?
It would be up to the board. It's a project-by-project specificity, and what you need to do in a case like that is through the development agreement, which is what you did with the Cambria, decide what's a better option for you. Is it better to have them do the work on the ground while they're doing the work on the ground, which is often the case, or is it more fiscally responsible for the city to do that and just collect the fee? Now, there's a distinction with the Cambria because the roads involved there are county roads. The county has its own fee and state, but the state doesn't have a fee, but the county has a fee, and so the county was a part of that negotiation in terms of how they credited the work that was done in association with that development.
So
you would be doing the same thing if there were an improvement that you wanted to see.
Okay.
On a city property.
So in fairness, I guess, then, while these are adopted fees that we'd be looking at, if we see the potential to underground utilities or do something different, this number that we're talking about could be a sliding scale where we could say, okay, well, they're going to put $2 million into underground utilities from 130th Street to 135th Street instead of paying us an impact fee. I don't like the idea of the money going right into the general fund. I like it going to a specific fund or
we call them trust funds.
Trust funds. Okay, great. Okay.
So you would have a mobility trust fund that mobility fees would go in. You'd have a culture and recreation trust fund that culture and recreation fees would go in, and a public safety trust fund that those fees would go in. And they would only be able to go in those fees, and they could only be expended for improvements in those areas.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm asking a very general question right now. For the Cambria, for example, what would, and I know this isn't the big fee of the two fees that we're going to be talking about, but what would the mobility fee have been for the Cambria? Off the top of your, if you don't know it, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to kind of catch.
I may. I may be able to take a wag at it. So, according to a very quick and dirty analysis that the building department did today, the Cambria would be 34,502 square feet. So you would multiply that by $1.50, and that would be their mobility fee.
That's just the mobility
60 grand,
fee,
something like that, right?
That's not.
That's just the mobility fee, yes.
That's just the mobility fee, and the other fee is what, $11? I mean,
$11.89.
yeah, we don't want to jump that far ahead,
No.
but yeah.
We're not voting
okay.
on that
Okay.
tonight.
Okay.
Well,
All right. Cool. No, I appreciate you answering the questions. That was pretty much all I had.
I'd like to bring up something. Do you have any questions? Did you have any questions?
Go ahead first. And then-
Okay. I went over this, and I've gone over it pretty extensively. And basically, you're talking about $14 a square foot with
Not this ordinance, but the ordinance together.
with everything
that
that's
would come
coming
forward
up.
you. Yes, sir.
And what I would like to see us do is, rather than jamming development right off the bat with that high a figure, when we're trying to bring development in, I would like to propose that we start off at a lower figure and ramp it up year by year until we get to this benchmark of $14. And what I asked Jerry to give me the figures on was I was thinking about 40% of what has been proposed, because $14 a square foot is just a tremendous amount. That ramps us back to $5.60, and that would be increased at 10% per year for the following 6 years to bring us up to the $12 to $14 mark. And that's what I think. I don't think it's kind of hard to say we're wanting to bring some responsible development in, and then we hammer them with a $14 square foot fee, which is basically a poison pill for some of this development. When you look at Johns Pass Village, all you have to do is stand on the boardwalk, look across the waterway at all the vacant properties sitting there in Treasure Island. And personally, I want to keep that hotel in Johns Pass Village. The schooner is cleaning up an eyesore in Madeira Beach, is chasing away a lot of bad element that none of us want here. And it's nothing but a positive for Madeira Beach. So that's my proposal, is that we start at 40% of what we're talking about, which is going to bring that down from a $13.99 per square foot, and that's living area, to $5.60 per square foot for the first year. And then it will ramp up next year, and the year after, and the year after, and so on, until we get up to this point. And then in this time where building materials have gone up 280%, we're not killing the people that are trying to bring us the golden goose. That's my 2 cents worth.
I think it's premature. We're only voting on the mobility today. Those other numbers have not even been presented to us, and I'm not going to make a decision on what may or may not come out in the future unless our expert can explain it to me, Mr. Murphy. I mean, if it's in stone what these are, they haven't been presented to me, so I don't know. So we've got $1.50 mobility, right? So what, the other one was public safety?
One is public safety and the other is culture and recreation.
And when are we bringing those up for vote?
Those were in the LPA earlier this month and should be coming to you the first meeting in June.
All right, how much are you proposing for a impact fee for public safety?
60 cents per square foot.
See, that doesn't give me heartburn either. So everything is on recreation and culture? We got $12 or so on that?
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
What I've handed out to you is a calculation sort of based on what the mayor presented a moment ago, and also the most latest legislation passed by the wonderful Florida legislature, which is apparently ready to be signed by the governor from all sources that I've heard. What I've given you in the spreadsheet is basically, at the top, it shows you what 100% would be based on our report, and the ordinance is based on the report. And then an adoption at 50% with a 12.5 increase annually, which is what the legislation proposes as the maximum increase that you're allowed to have. And then also at 40%, which is just another number. You, as a policy, can adopt impact fees at a percentage of what they're supposed to be. You can adopt them at 100%, you can adopt them at 50%, 40%, whatever, phase them in over time. That's all a policy decision for you. What the University of Florida has done is crunch the numbers and show you how that distribution works at a full 100% valuation. And that is based to maintain the level of service that you've adopted in the comprehensive plan, which, you know, you're required to do. In the past, how you've achieved that level of service, the one that you currently have, has generally been through ad valorem taxes, general fund. You have paid for what you've built out of the funds that you have. You may have had some grants in the past. Those don't really matter. So moving forward, if the idea is that growth should pay for itself, then 100% of the impact should be afforded by the development community. But that's a policy. You don't have to have that policy, and for the last, since 1950s anyway, you haven't had any impact fees. So moving into 100% impact fees based on everything that you've developed over time, yes, I can see where that would be seen as a drastic change. And so a phasing in is quite reasonable, and a lot of places do it. Places during the recession rolled impact fees back away with the idea that that would stimulate development. That data does not prove true. Generally, the data has shown that communities that have impact fees and maintain their impact fees and spend them according to the way that they're supposed to do it, keep that level of service high and are the most attractive communities in their areas. Right. And I would posit that Madeira Beach is one of the most attractive communities in Pinellas county, and I think that the data from the Tourist and Development Visitors Convention Bureau, whatever you guys call it, shows that out, and that's in the report on the level of service standards.
Yeah, I want to do something reasonable. I don't think we need to go overboard right off the bat. Many communities, in fact, do waive impact fees to bring development in. It's an incentive to get developers to come into their areas where they have areas that are blighted, like the Schooner, for example. It's its own little, no offense, Jeff, own little blighted area down there. And I, for one, would like to see it cleaned up. And that's why I think this is something that, as developers see that Madeira Beach is where they want to be, year after year, we'll be ramping these fees up and bringing more development in, more reasonable development. I sit here, as do the other commissioners, and say this will never be a Clearwater Beach. But we've got to have some modernizing of what we've got. We've got a lot of old rundown places that need to be updated and bring some more revenue in and make it a better place to live.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, and let me state, I'm very happy because I agree with all of you. I mean, Commissioner Price, you're straight on. I think that it's tough to address the second leg of this or the third leg of this with these fees until we have them all together. My opinion is we should probably do this all at once. I think that just kind of getting a better snapshot and saying, okay, we're going to approve the $1.50 one, but we're not going to do this, and we're going to discount this one 40% and the likes of that. I just think we need it all in front of us at one time to make an appropriate decision on how much this is going to be per square foot. My other heartburn with this is, you know, a Schooner project's a great example. I know Jeff and his partner bought that property a couple of years ago. They've been working with you guys for the course of 2 years. They came up with one, it didn't work out, and they came back to the drawing board. And, you know, there are people that have bought property in this town that are looking at developing it, and all of a sudden now we're going to throw a monkey wrench into projects that you've already seen and adding a substantial fee to them that they weren't planning on when they bought the property. It's not in their business model. And I for one, would either be thinking of grandfathering in any project that you've seen or pushing this back until 2022. Or this, you know, we'll approve it, but we don't start these impact fees until then, because then now we're going back to the drawing board. So now you're going to have to talk to the developers that you're talking to right now, and they're going to have to readjust their plan so they can make the amount of rooms that they need, if it's a hotel or what have you, in order to make that number work again, because there's another XYZ factor coming on top of it. All for this. I think it's a great idea, as long as we properly set the pricing right, and since we're kind of the first guy on the block doing this, it's going to be trial by error right away, because we're not going to know whether it's appropriate or not. I guess we'll know when developers either walk to the door, see the paperwork, and then run, or they say, oh, okay, these are feasible, we can do that. So I don't want to lose the advantage of trying to work with them to do specific projects around town that we don't have to come out of pocket for. I kind of like that idea. But, you know, that's just kind of my 2 cents. If we can kind of meld this all together so that we're looking at one project, and then we can have a little leniency, or, you know, just to be able to look at some of these things that are in front of us right now without having to go back to the drawing board and try this all over again. Because I'll tell you what, if I bought a piece of property and I was looking to develop it, and I've already approached you with it, and then all of a sudden, oh, well, we're really busy, we didn't get around to you, but you're going to get knocked with these fees at $14 a square foot. I'm not sure I'd be thrilled about that. Thank you.
Jerry, does everyone have this handout?
Yes, sir, and also the statute. And if I could, with your permission, I'd like to go over a couple items in the statute.
Yes,
wait a
please.
minute, I do have something to say after all that. First of all, we've been talking about this for a year and a half, right? Commissioner Dalford was the one who brought this up and championed it, and everyone got behind him on it, and I agreed with him. Secondly, we don't need developers to come in and clean up our blighted areas. If we have areas of this town that we think people are doing drugs in and things of that nature, we have a sheriff department for that. I don't think we should be relying on developers to come in and clean up these areas. We need to be we already have things in place to clean up these areas. But I don't mind doing this all together. I don't mind doing it piecemeal. I think if we knock out the mobility now with a 40% and then move to the next one, discuss it, talk about, and go on that line, that's fine with me. I'd like to see something coming in, frankly. And would this, so my next question, would this apply retroactively to someone who's already started the process, and in fact, we're kind of in the middle of the process of approving a planned development for a rather large development?
Mr. Mayor, the the impact fees, are assessed at building permit. And so there's a lot of, for a big project, there's a lot of process prior to that.
So this would affect something that we're right up against, right?
Yes.
The building, okay. Yeah, well, I don't think we should do that.
Well.
But it's taken us so long to get mobility. All right, so for public safety and recreation and culture, can we, now that if we pass one tonight with an agreement that we're gonna start these fees next year, or start at 50% or whatever, are the other processes gonna be a little quicker? Have we kind of done the homework that we needed?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, and also presumably, this council can say, we don't need $12 per square foot for recreation and culture. We want to lower that, or we want to say we're going to start off with $3 and next year go to $4 and like that, you know.
Well,
I don't know if the new law, I know a new law just came out last week or something, which you'll explain, but.
Yeah, and I'm going to review that with you when the time
it
comes.
seems really, really high.
But, well, you've invested a lot of money in your community over time.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows, and it also shows in the figures. It would be better, I would suggest, that you adopt it as a percentage of the 100% study, and that you can do at any time. You can make it effective at a certain date, but your development process is ongoing. So at some point, somebody's not going to be happy because they were in the process. So that's a decision you want to make. If I could at this point, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go over the legislation.
Yes.
And that speaks a little bit to timing. If I can direct your attention to page 5 of 10 of the legislation that I held out, you should see a underlined section 6 that is a new section to the impact fee statute. And it goes on over to the next page and the page after that to new section 7. And basically what this has done is to put a ceiling on the increases that you can have to your impact fees. I think a little background in this is that major areas like Orange County have done impact fees. They've had them for years. When the recession came, many of them rolled them back. Now they're coming around to putting them back to the levels that they were at prior to the recession, or whatever prompted them to reduce them or roll them back, and the increases are quite dramatic. And so people are not happy, and when they can't get local satisfaction, they go to Tallahassee. And this is what Tallahassee has basically come up with. And what this basically says, as far as I've read it and have not gotten the legislative interpretation that's forthcoming, but basically it limits a community to increasing their impact fees by 12.5% annually. And you have some other criteria that you have to go through. That criteria is basically all included in the ordinance that's proposed for you, before you today, in terms of having studies and doing updates and that type of stuff. But the bottom line is the legislature is intending for you to limit any increases to 12.5%. So that's why I provided the spreadsheet that shows you if you adopt at 50%, for example, or if you adopt at 40%, for example, how an annual increase of 12.5% would get you to the study number over time. And that study number can change, and a number of things can do it if we update it annually, which is our recommendation, particularly since this is the first time. You want to take another look. We think the data can be much more granular and much more refined to your benefit. We've erred on a side of caution. If there's anything that was questionable, we left it out. And we think we left out some things that might be significant, particularly in terms of your property values. But that would then, so say you decide not to invest as much out of the general fund to make up for that reduction. So then your level of service would decrease to some extent, and the fee could be reduced or not increase as much, or the increase would be limited to 12.5%, but you might get to the cap based on an annual recalculation sooner than 2028 because the level of service decreases. I don't foresee you decreasing your level of service. I think the calculation is pretty reasonable. The other thing that it doesn't take into effect is the new buzzword that the economists are talking about, that is inflation. So we're looking at what apparently is inevitable inflation. The Fed doesn't seem to be worried about it, but other people do. It could be a temporary inflation because of this distribution chains, a lot of different moving parts in the economy that have been disrupted, not least of which is COVID-19. But again, the way your fee is set up, it's to be recalculated on an annual basis, given the most current data, and adjusted according to that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
And again, I'm just reading through this, Jerry, but if I can get you to turn to page 6, Jerry.
Yes, sir.
And it's under subsection E, it's line 137. It says an impact fee may not be increased more than once every 4 years. So I don't know if you can do the annual changes.
So what you would do is you would adopt an increase, and then it would phase in annually over 4 years, and that's like 50%. And that's the idea of the phasing. So you would adopt, basically, say the spreadsheet that's in front of you is part of the ultimate ordinance, which will be, so this is the ordinance, but it directs only the mobility fee number, because that's what we calculated first. We'll be amending the ordinance in June, or proposing to amend the ordinance to June, to bring in those other two fees. And at that point, we could make some corrections with regard to how you want to roll in those increases over time, or that could be done the following year. But either way, if you decide that you want to get 12.5% increases over the next 4 years, you would say that at one point and then phase them in on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry.
So if we, say, went ahead and did this whole thing tonight, so to speak,
Well,
I know part of it hasn't come to us yet, but basically approving the 40% figure and a phase-in over 6 years to get us up to that target number.
Mr. Mayor, if you were, as a commission, to provide us that direction, I think that are changes that we could make to the proposed ordinance 2021-20, or 10, or whatever the next one is. We could incorporate those changes at least before the second reading.
Okay. As long as that is in place before this goes into effect on the 1st, is that what it is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we would like to be done with the process by June, by the end of June, because this ordinance will become effective on July 1, I believe, or under the governor's signature if that happens sooner.
But we could make it effective starting January 1st, 2022, if we wanted to. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think as long as it's adopted, you could make it effective. The fee itself could be effective at another date. The thing we want to be careful about is our data starts becoming less and less current because we started this, as you mentioned, 18 months ago.
Well, when we're coming down to $5.60, do we want to wait until January?
I think so. I don't want to penalize people that have made decisions on significant development based on things that happened before tonight.
Well, I don't
before these
think
numbers.
that
I never saw $11.89 for culture and recreation. And maybe it's my bad. I didn't see it anywhere in here, so.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
it is, Commissioner, it's not in the ordinance that is in front of you, but it's in an ordinance that was discussed and recommended by the local planning agency, Planning Commission, earlier this month. At that point, it became public record, and so the public is aware of it, and I think that's where the interest has increased.
Yes.
Mr. Beggins, how many air-conditioned square feet are you adding to the schooner?
About 30,000 total.
What have you got now?
Right there, I don't know, top of my head, Mr. Mayor, probably additional
You have 20,000 now?
No, that's expanded, he's saying.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have the exact ones, but it's about 30,000 square feet total, the new building, and let's call it 10,000 there now. So say it's a delta of 20,000 just for case of, just
Round
simple math.
figures, just for,
So that would be 20,000 square feet times $14.
No,
No.
we're only talking
Times
about
5.6.
mobility.
Okay.
if you're only talking mobility,
And we're talking about starting it at 40%, that's 60 cents. Right?
well, basically, if we do this whole thing and it goes into effect, you're talking $112,000 for the total building.
Right.
Those are round figures.
Right.
Okay.
I've got some comments.
Unless he can
Yeah.
get his building permit in before January 1st.
Well, if we wait until January 1st, that's the whole thing.
Yeah. I've got some other comments, but I wait till that's the right time.
I think you're probably
Yeah.
going to need to be
You know-
sworn in on that also. No? Okay.
All right. So I think we can agree to kind of postpone the implementation of the impact fees, but I think we do need to make some decisions tonight on the mobility. And maybe we can follow suit with the rest of them as they come in and start off with the percentage and let it go up.
Well, just keep in mind, we need to have this done before the end of June on everything.
Right.
So we're running into a time crunch.
Well, that's why we need to decide tonight, so it can all be written up and we can read these and,
Well, I'm fine with going with the 40% tonight. Even if we, if we delay implementation till 2022, that's fine, though honestly, I'd like to see some of this money in the city treasury so we can get our parks redone. But, I
Okay.
can live with
well,
that
let's
too.
hear the rest first and then we can all. Dave's chomping at the bit, I think.
Yeah.
No, I'm just worried about the implementation date being after the bill is signed. You're really sure that will still work, for not get us in trouble?
Commissioner, the legislation is new. I'm trying to decipher it. I think that, and the legislature has an innate desire to tinker with impact fees on a regular basis. I think that if you are adopting your ordinance before the July 1st date, your ordinance can implement the fee at a later date, but you will have adopted it. And I'll defer to the city attorney if he's got a better idea, and also to the mechanics of how we might combine these ordinances into a single hearing or continue something, if that's the desire of the commission.
Well, go ahead, Tom, I don't want to interrupt you here.
I agree with Jerry that once the ordinance is adopted, then you've done it within the time frame prior to the July bill becoming law. So you could set it out sometime in the future as to when it's going to start, and you can set it out as to how you are actually going to capture it, whether it's 40% and then 12.5% per year after that. That can be done, but you need to do all of that, give us that direction before July 1 comes along. We need to get that done. So I would not, for the notice purposes that have already taken place relative to this ordinance, I would not monkey around with that. I would suggest that what we do is to adopt this ordinance that you've got before you tonight with the direction that you're going to give us relative to the percentage and start date and that type of thing. And then when the other ones come through relative to public safety and culture and recreation, we can adjust those the same way that we're adjusting this one tonight.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Is there any public comment? Right.
Ray Kerr, 583 Johns Pass Avenue, Madeira Beach. When I first started getting involved with the board, listening to everything going on, it was about 3 years ago, I guess, and there was a lot of comment on the new development, the Cambria and the condos and all the commercial, if you remember all that. And quite a few residents came up and spoke about impact fees, and is there any impact fee going on? And I thought that was a great idea, because there's definitely an impact. You're adding condos, you're adding people, you're adding resources that are being taken from the residents, from the coffers, from the residents. I still believe that, but you got to remember that this ordinance is not just commercial. It's residential. And you have to consider what, previous meetings have had to do with mitigating from flood and tearing down your home and raising it. And by the time you just do the engineering studies and put the pilings in the ground and pour the slab, you're already over 6 figures on most of these homes. If you're going to put that kind of money into a home, most of my neighbors, including myself, laundry rooms in the garage. Well, you're going to want to put that into your home. You're going to expand the size of your home. You're going to have stairs. Half the time they're going to be air conditioned. You may want a pantry. You're going to have a nice new home. There's all kind of things that you can expand that home with that is not directly impacting anything in the community. So typically what you see is most of these homes that get torn down, and that footprint, let's call it a 1,500 square foot home, now it's an elevated 2-story, and it's still 1,500, but it's an additional 1,500 on top of that, because you're making it a nicer home. And then again, you have to have stairs to get from level 1A to level B. So if you just double that and you think about the impact at $14 a square foot, quickly gets to $21,000 that you're adding on to someone that's trying to just raise their home above for the flood. So I don't know. It's my understanding you can't separate residential and commercial. Is there something you can exclude for mitigating purposes? So if you're going to raise your home, that you're not being impacted by these fees. That should be part of the discussion. And I really like Commissioner Andrews' idea that you table this one thing until next month, and you have the whole fee, the whole $14 to talk about, and you can talk about some real impacts, not only commercially but residentially. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, Commission, Bill Carnes, 11055 9th Street East, Treasure Island, Florida. Parks impact fees, as high as they are, after building a beautiful park out here, I certainly would love to see some more dollars to maintain the park. So just want to start with that. So I'll give you an idea of what we're talking about. I've got a 38-unit condo building going on right now on 150th Avenue. That building is 81,166 square feet. At $5.60 total impact fees, because I don't care about mobility or I'm talking about total as a builder and as a developer. At 5.6, it adds $454,529 to that project. At 13.99, it adds $1,135,512. The entire recreation budget this year was a little under $800,000. I think that's just an obscene number, to be frank about it. I have a building right now that we're starting to pre-sell since the Harbor building's been successful. We're getting ready to apply for our permits, And on the second building, it's the residence at Town Center. That building's a smaller building, it's 27 units. I was allowed to do 36. You talk about responsible development, by choice, we went down to 27 units. 66,693 square feet at $5.60 adds $373,480 right out of nowhere. At $13.99, it's 933,000 additional dollars. I don't think this has been done properly. I hate to see the city of Madeira Beach being the guinea pig for all of the beach communities. I've called every one of them today. There's not one city that even has it on their agenda. Yet here we sit. I'm appalled by the notion of it. I think it's something that should be looked at and looked at hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Jeff Beggins, 429 Boca Drive. Couple things. Number one, people have choices, right? I think, Mr. Mayor, you actually mentioned that earlier, of where they're going to buy, where they're going to build, where they're going to develop, right? And I think you've got to think about the genesis of when this started. I think the energy and the attitude of the economic cycle and the commission cycle was more about stunting growth rather than bringing it about. So I think if we think about that aspect. Ray brought up something really important. Now, we have, 50 homes flooded out with Ada, with big problems? And the way things are going and the way things are being redeveloped, most of our homes, we have 1,000-square-foot homes, right? And a lot of those are being bought and being redeveloped, and they're not putting up 1,500-square-foot homes. They're putting up 4,500-square-foot homes, 4,000-square-foot homes, just what the market's doing. So you put a 3,000-square-foot home on top of that old house, or 4,000-square-foot home, that's $42,000. Where does that come from? It comes from the land value of our residents, right? The house is going to sell for less, the lot's going to sell for less because the building's going to cost more, right? But they can go right over the bridge and do the same thing over there for not that same thing. It's going to have an impact on our residences and property values because money just doesn't come. It's got to come from somewhere. So a $42,000 hit on a redevelopment hurts the residents, right? So from my real estate broker hat, looking out for the whole community, that's a big thing to consider, right? And especially nobody else is doing it. So it's going to be a lot easier for somebody to go build a house in Reddington or Reddington Shores in Madeira, and I think we would like to have the nicer homes there. So I think that's something to really consider on that one. I don't think everyone's been bringing that in. And from a development, we do a lot of development. We've got offices all around. I happen to live in Madeira, and I love it. But from development, like South Hillsborough County, for example, Palo Beach, a lot of development going on. That's real impact. That's farmland turning into communities. We have to impact schools, roads, water, sewer, trash, impacts police, everything, right? We're doing redevelopment. This is not development, right? So a lot of the impacts have already happened, so the impact fee is really needs to be thought about. We have a great solution now with the development agreement where you guys can say, pull your idea and say, tell you what, give us $100,000 because we'd like to fix up a park. You can do that to any guy who brings a project to you. We'd like to underground 10 blocks. Throw it out there. But I don't think we have to penalize all the residents in town for redeveloping their houses and single family. So I think we have to think about the far-reaching impacts of this, and it's not just that. Plus, that's just my thought from a resident, a homeowner, and somebody that cares about the property values. There you go.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments from the commission? Questions?
I've got a question. In the case where we're tearing down a house and putting up 2 stories, something that's bigger, does the first floor, which is going to be evacuated, count? I mean, if it's a 1,500 square foot on the first floor, it's a 1,500 square foot if that's just what's on the second floor, correct?
So if the area below base flood elevation is not occupiable space, which it's not supposed to be, it would not be included. If you consider that to be, and I like to use 1,000 square feet just because it's an easy number. So currently you have 1,000 square feet on ground level, non-conforming for flood regulations. the owner decides that they want to elevate that house, so you have 1,000 square feet on the ground, and it may be enclosed to some extent for storage, access, and parking, but it's not livable area as the property appraiser looks at it. And so it would only be the floor above that that would be the 1,000 square feet, so that would be credit neutral. If you were to add a second story with another 1,000 square feet, that would be an addition, and that would be impacted, that would be charged.
Okay, so just raising a house does nothing, no impact fee.
If you're just raising the existing footprint, the example that was brought up earlier from the public comment, talking about adding stairs and things like that, that would be air-conditioned, stuff like that, you know, if the property appraiser assesses them, then it would be counted.
Okay, and then is there a time period between when the property is torn down, where the new one is built, that it goes from being a rebuild to a new construction? You have to do it within a year or a certain time period?
There's a provision in the ordinance for basically non-conforming structures, non-conforming uses, that if it's torn down and the property remains vacant, and I think it's probably a year, that's most cases, I'm not intimately familiar with that, then it would be considered a vacant property and you'd be starting over. You can modify that. The impact fee window is usually 7 years, meaning that from the day that you collect the impact fee, that fee needs to be expended within 7 years or it has to be refunded. You could have that 7-year criteria in terms of impact fees, but it would be something that would have to be tracked from the demolition permit and the better plan. And I don't know that you're going to have that many situations. Maybe in a post-disaster situation, you might have some teardowns that would remain vacant for a longer period of time, but that is a consideration that you could make elsewhere in the land development code.
Yes, and also, we don't get a lot of that. Usually people come in with a plan for their new house before they tear the old one down, in part because a big majority of our homes are non-conforming for setbacks, and if they get a redevelopment approved before they tear it down, they get credit for that existing footprint, and they can even continue to use up that encroachment into the setback. So we don't get a lot of that. At very least, there's usually some sort of permit active on it. I haven't really even seen anybody do that. There are some things we would like to be torn down, awaiting new buildings. But in every case, I think somebody's come back in with a redevelopment. In fact, we use that as an incentive. In the case of a hurricane or something like that, they have the ability to build back, even if they are like a multifamily inside a single-family area. You can get your same density and square footage back.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we pass ordinance number 2020-24 with the understanding that we are going to extend the time that it will become effective, and that we will be starting with a smaller percentage, and that we can tweak these numbers, I guess.
We need the detail.
Okay.
I need to know
40%.
I need to know the date that it's going to start, and I need to know the percentage, and then how are we going to do it after the first year in your motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Stop.
Okay.
In your motion also, I would like you to include an explicit determination of finding of facts for the recitals or whereas clauses as they're understood. That provides the factual basis then for the fees in the event that we're challenged later. It's on the record, obviously, as part of the ordinance, but I would request that you specifically adopt those recitals.
I don't have to say them all, correct?
Oh, ma'am.
'Cause there's 5 pages. I could just say we agree with the whereas clauses?
You adopt them as your findings of fact for the ordinance?
I'm comfortable with the 40% if that's what the motion is.
What do y'all think? 40% starting January 1st, 2020, or November 1st, or 30% starting November 1st, or?
Our new budget year, or
That's
January
October
1st, y'all take your pick, I'm fine with it.
And then 10% increase? That keeps us
10%
under
per
the
year
12?
for the next 6 years after that. Yes.
At 3%. Okay, I'll try.
I'm glad it's you.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance number 2020-24, specifically adopting the whereas clauses within the ordinance, or the facts laid out in the whereas clauses, starting October 1st, 2021, starting with 40% of the impact fees for mobility, and increasing 10% per year for the next 10 years.
Nope, 6 years. It can only be 100%
That's right.
total.
I'm not reading my notes.
So
10% for the next 6 years.
Is there a second?
Good job.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
No.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 4-1.
Next on the agenda, I'd like to interrupt our public hearings. Representative Cheney is here to give us an update on this year's legislative session. I'd like y'all to give a warm welcome to Representative Cheney.
Thank you so much. It kind of felt like coming home, being a city commissioner in my days before going up to Tallahassee. So I apologize that I was late, and I'm grateful that I was, because it was a good conversation. So what did we do in the last 60 days in Tallahassee? A heck of a lot more than they do in Washington in 60 days, I can tell you that. We had about 3,000 bills proposed. Of that, 250 passed. We balanced the budget, and that was a result of Florida being open for business, so we didn't have the deficits that we thought we would have, and some of the federal money that we were given. So that combination worked out really well for us. My session, I focused on balancing the needs of business with the environment, because in our communities in the state of Florida, the environment is the economy. There's no separating the two. So that was my focus, that and making sure I brought money back to our district. And Madeira Beach was the biggest winner of all of the projects that I requested. I requested 8 projects. 6 of them have gotten into the budget and are on the governor's desk for signature. The largest project in my requests is for Madeira Beach groin rehabilitation, $1.75 million. You're welcome. My pleasure. And I was known throughout the Capitol and the governor's office when I came. They were like, I know, Madeira Beach. So you all are known up in Tallahassee. The other projects in my appropriations were for roads, sewers, parks all throughout the beach area, and in St. Petersburg, the Science Center, which a lot of our children all went to for summer camps. That needs to be rehabilitated, so I got money in the budget to rehabilitate that, and I see that as a real timely issue because St. Pete Mayor has vowed to tear it down and turn it into affordable housing, which we need, but I think that that is a facility that's a one-time opportunity, feeds STEM into our public school system. So I think that's a really unique project, and I'm so happy the money's in the budget. And Mr. Governor, please. So my bills. As a freshman, I'm told you really don't get bills and you really don't get money. Well, that's not the way it went. So I was really grateful for the relationships I developed that helped me to pass 5 of my 7 bills and get 6 of my 8 projects funded. My first bill was to close a loophole in the sexual offender registry law. Unintended, if you are a convicted sexual offender and you have not paid your fine, you do not have to be in the registry. So they could be living next to you, where your children play, at a school, at a church, and nobody would know because they're not in the registry simply because they didn't pay their fine. So that loophole has been closed. That bill was effective when it was signed, which was a week or 2 weeks ago. It is also retroactive. I was with the sheriff's office today, who told me at the end of the month they're going to start rounding anybody up who's been convicted and is not in the registry. So our neighborhoods will be safer by the end of this month. I had a bill for transparency in sex education in curriculum in our public schools. That is the one area of curriculum that is not reviewed by the school board, like our core curriculum is, very sensitive subject matter. Parents have the opportunity to opt out, but what they did not have the opportunity was to see the specific materials that their children were being taught. And parents and grandparents in this community brought me some materials that are too obscene to show in a public meeting, but were being taught to our 10-year-old children. So this bill puts a stop to that, or it brings those materials forward into a public meeting. I did a massage therapy bill, which updated the statute, which doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but it meant a whole lot to the thousands of massage therapists across the state, so it helped small business. And the bill that you all kind of were just talking about is tax incentives for flood mitigation. So if a homeowner voluntarily elevates their property, the elevated portion up to 110% will not have an increase in property tax. So you take that 1,000 square foot home, and if you make it an 1,100 square foot home, it retains the same property tax assessed value. Anything over the 110 then would be assessed at the new rate. So it is an incentive to elevate your property, not wait for a hurricane to cause a damage. All of the unlivable space underneath is not not subject to property tax. So you actually could really double the size of a home with this without having increased property tax. Touch real quickly on some other legislation. We had a cybersecurity bill that, because of the pipeline cyber attack, we see that Florida is ahead of the curve on that. This set up an agency and a cybersecurity center that acts as a clearinghouse to store threat information, do assessments, and assist state agencies in making sure that their IT systems are secure from cyber attacks. So in the state of Florida, we should not have concerns about our water systems, our power grids. This bill will address those issues. Property insurance, big issue for all of us. Some of us have seen anywhere between a 30% and a 40% increase in our property taxes. A lot of that has been driven by fraudulent roofing claims. And interestingly, today, somebody was on a street corner and handed me a postcard and said, "I can get you a free roof." It's exactly, he's shaking his head. It's exactly that drove up the property tax. So this bill puts an end to those fraudulent claims while increasing the efficiency of paying out legitimate claims. Education, that was a big issue for us. 43% of Florida's children are not reading at grade level by 3rd grade. And if you're not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, 88% of high school graduates were not able to do that. So it's imperative that you read at grade level by third grade. So we did a number of student literacy programs where we identified low-performing schools, provided programs and support for them to bring their reading programs up to grade. And we also started the first ever statewide free book distribution program for children in the state of Florida. We gave teachers their pay raises. We increased per student allocations, so there's more money going into our schools. There's a real focus by the legislature to improve the education system in the state of Florida so that our children can compete on a global marketplace and be prepared to do that. The environment, I'm so happy we have $2.1 billion in water projects in the state budget. And we have every indication, that was a request by the governor. So we have every indication these are all going through. That's for Everglades restoration, springs, storm, wastewater grants, resiliency grants. One of the programs that we put in place that is part of the resiliency package, we did a bill signing with I did a bill signing with the governor today, and part of it, the elevation part is my part. The other part is $100 million a year is going to go into local governments to harden your communities. So there's going to be grants available for raising roads, seawalls, all different types of ways to harden your communities against flooding. So I was just talking with Secretary Noah Valenstein today about that, and I said, so what's the secret sauce? How do we get those grants? And he said, we're working on it right now. We're actually developing the forms and the process, so I will be closely in touch with him and closely in touch with you all to see what kind of grants are available and what you can access. We put $400 million into the Florida Forever Fund to acquire conservation lands. Healthcare, big issue, $4.3 billion to fund Medicaid. To serve an anticipated 4.8 million Floridians with no reduction in eligibility or services. This is the highest caseload in Florida history. There are 20% of Floridians that are in the Medicaid system. So we needed that funding. And the broken unemployment system, that was such a problem that, trailing off now, fortunately, but we put almost $150 million to modernize that system and bring on additional staffing to handle the claim volume that some are reporting is still happening. So I'm glad to see that's in there. And we continued to fund Visit Florida. $50 million is what they had before. They have it again. So there'll be tourists coming to our community. And we expanded the tax holiday, so it's now longer, and it covers more products, particularly businesses that were affected by COVID, like theaters, live music and sporting events, and cultural events. So that's just a highlight. Like I said, there's over 250 bills, so I certainly couldn't touch on all of them, but I was pleased personally that the session I felt was really well balanced. It touched on all of the major areas. I don't feel any area of importance to Floridians was left out of the discussion, out of the bills, or out of the budget. And I am here as your partner, and I would welcome you to reach out to me at any time. You all have a very good lobbyist who helps you get the attention that you need up in Tallahassee. But my door is always open as well. Thank you.
Linda, you have carried the sword well from Madeira Beach. Thank you. Next is ordinance 2021-07, regulating micromobility devices. Mr. Trask, would you like to read that ordinance, please?
Yes, Mayor. This is ordinance 2021-07, ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 66 of the City of Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances to create Article 5, micromobility, establishing regulations for micromobility users and micromobility providers operating within the City of Madeira Beach and providing for an effective date. That was the reading of ordinance 2021-07 by title only.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this is here as a second reading. We just went through this last time we were all together. There was only one error we noted at the time, which is the point at which it was they were referenced as units instead of devices, and we cleaned that up. Also happened to notice as we went through that the numbering and the outlining was all whacked out because it had been developed in other cities that apparently use very creative outlining. But we went back and fixed it so it works with our code, and those are the only changes that were made. Did not change the title or the content.
I did notice on page 71, and going over this again this past weekend, it's got 20 miles an hour, line 5 rather than 15. Does that need to correspond to the max speed of 15 on page 73?
I would think that was your intent. We didn't discuss that specifically, but I'm sure that was the intent.
Yeah, I think it was, because it's got, it's probably just a
Well, one's a
glitch
definition.
there.
One's a definition of a micromobility device, which presumably they go 20 miles an hour, and the other one is a prohibition that device go over 15 miles an hour. So I don't think it's...
Well, it states, yeah, it states on page 73, the maximum speed in the city shall be a maximum speed of 15, so I guess we don't need to put that in. I just wanted to check on that.
Yeah.
I understand. So one just defines what is micromobility, the other limits how fast they can go.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's all I really had a question on. I think we kind of beat this horse to death last meeting. Any other comments from the commission?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any public comments on this? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to allow ordinance number 2021-07.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
I see Chief Belk is here, so we will go ahead with ordinance 2021-11, building regulations and fire prevention code updates.
I'll go ahead and read that ordinance, Mayor.
Okay.
This is ordinance 2021-11, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending Section 14-31 of Chapter 14, Buildings and Building Regulations, and certain sections of Chapter 38, Fire Prevention and Protection of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Madeira Beach to update the addition references of the Uniform Fire Code and Life Safety Code and providing for an effective date hereof. That was the reading of ordinance 2021-11 by title only.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, what this was, just going through the ordinances, I noticed there was a lot of old, outdated, antiquated information in there. We were still trying to enforce the fire code from 2004. I felt that it was probably the best thing to do to update it to a more current, the current fire code that we do enforce. There was only one item on there that we changed. It stated that all occupancies or businesses had to have all their emergency lighting and exit lights under generator power. Well, that would essentially mean that the T-shirt shop would have to put a generator in. So we reworded that and made it, if the code states that a generator is required, then that would kick in. But it was just kind of cleaning up some language.
Okay, I think for the most part, those lights are supplied by battery packs, aren't they?
Yes, a lot of them are, but in the generators are only really required in condos or bigger occupancies like this one or the fire station. So at that, yeah, the way that it was read before, it could have been twisted a little bit, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions from the commission for me? Perfect. Thank you.
I have none. Is there any public comment on this? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to pass ordinance number 2021-11.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Hodges?
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is ordinance 2021-12, proposed amendment to fees and collection procedure manual, first reading. Mr. Laughlin?
If I can read the ordinance, Mayor?
Yes.
This is ordinance 2021-12, an ordinance of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending the Fees and Collection Procedures Manual that was amended by ordinance 2020-04, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for an immediate effective date. It was a reading of ordinance 2021-12 by title only.
Great, thank you. So the city has adopted and subsequently amended throughout the years through ordinance the Fee and Collection Procedures Manual. So this dictates all the fees for all the services that the departments of the city assess for its services. The last update to the manual was in March of 2020. Recently, the departments were tasked with evaluating that Fees and Collection Procedures Manual and assessing if there are any fees where there are any inequities, blatant inequities between what the level of services that are provided compared to the fees that are being generated. So we wanted to eliminate any imbalances and any of those items that are clear that need to be adjusted from the existing manual we put before you. There are some that may require a little more discussion and deliberation amongst you. For example, looking at our sanitation fees, looking at our parking fees. I think we need to do those more in conjunction with the annual budgeting process and have workshops around that to discuss that. These are more what I would call kind of the low-hanging fruit, things that the department heads felt were obvious and needed changes that need to be made. They're summarized well summarized in an exhibit that shows old versus new, and department representatives are here if you have any questions on any specific changes and why they were made, but that's a good representation of the changes that were made within the manual. So within accompanying the exhibit, or accompanying the ordinance, is the Exhibit A, which is the now updated fee manual, as well as that additional exhibit that shows old versus new for the few changes that were made. So if you have any questions, we'll be happy to address them.
I do. I see one of the changes is now we let city employees put their children in our aftercare program for free, when prior to that it was at a resident rate. Do we know how many children are in our aftercare program?
Yeah, sure.
City employee? Oh,
Jay could come up and address that.
that's a significant, several $100s per person. I don't know how it's going to be offset with 3 other changes.
So, there's the after-school care and there's the summer camp. After-school care is currently free. The summer camp was the additional one that we had this, years ago and it was taken fully away, where they paid after-school care and summer camp, and then we got after-school care back, and then just presenting that change. My thought behind it is, this is most often used by the recreation department and our fire department. And the fire department, it's usually 1 or 2 days a week, depending on their schedule. For my justification within the recreation department is, if you're gonna bring your kid to the place you work and pay to watch your own kid, it doesn't make sense. So it's just it was a benefit that we're trying to pass through. So, it's something that existed when I was hired, it was taken away, and then something that we were trying to put back in. So, again, just a recommendation, for discussion, but that's where that comes from. And as far as the number goes, again, it's only a handful. I think currently right now of all the children in the rec department staff, we have one of age that fits school age within our department. And then with the fire department, off the top of my head, there's 3, and that's one family. So we have their 3, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, depending on, their work schedule. So it really is more of a convenience thing, because I would much rather have them the peace of mind to know that their children are being watched by the staff that they know and work with, versus trying to struggle to find, that single or double daycare each week and, try to get to work, so. Yep.
So what we see in the comparison chart is wrong, basically, I guess, because I don't know. First of all, it took me a long time to find these changes in the actual document. It might have been better just to take our old fee and collection procedure manual and just let us know which ones are being changed in that. So, because I was going back forth, where's this, back forth. So it was hard for me to figure that out. Most of this I understand. I did notice that we have the alcoholic beverage permit went up to $700 instead of $5, and either that wasn't a change or we haven't been collecting $700. I look at these permits every single month; they're all $500. So I don't know. And I do want to talk about some changes to the parking. That last time we talked about raising the parking, I said let's think about raising the weekly and monthly. So, like right now, we're $2.50 an hour, and if someone parks for 8 hours, that's $20. But we sell a weekly parking rate pass for $60. I think that needs to go up to $100 or $80. And then the monthly parking pass we sell for $120. I think that needs to go up to about $200. I mean, if you're getting $20, if you're parking your car here 8 hours a day for 30 days, you're saving a lot of money.
I'm wondering how many of those we actually sell. Do you know, Bob?
Sorry. The most popular one is the weekly one. I don't have the exact numbers on what it is, but I just know from being in the lobby area and visitors that come down, they know ahead of time and they'll call and have the permit set up, and a lot of times we'll have it at the hotel that they're staying at ahead of time. They pay for it with a credit card and they have it at check-in. The exact numbers I don't know. I can work on getting that for you as we discuss it during the budgetary process, and I have all those numbers for you.
Okay, so we
I'm
really
just trying to
can
think
go
of
through
not.
these.
I mean, this is a very difficult thing to go back and forth and figure out. I don't know if you guys did that.
No, I didn't.
I don't mind raising some rates and getting rid of some stuff that we don't do. But I don't know. I think it should be workshopped before I don't like passing ordinances that I haven't even discussed.
Well, I don't think passing the ordinance has anything to do with whether or not we can go back and change a fee, though. Does it, Bob? Sorry.
No, that's okay. We basically can get the information on those if you decide that you want to pass this at the first reading. We still have a second reading of the ordinance, and as we've done with other ordinances, we've modified them in between.
Yeah.
Or, so if there is some change you want to make, we just thought, we've been kicking this can down the road when it comes to these changes, and we'd like to get them implemented, again, just to try to help us bring in some of the correct fees or what we should be charging. And that's why we're looking at this. Then the remainder we're going to be addressing as we go through the budget process. But if there is a change you want to make, Vice Mayor, we can, jot that down and we can have that in the ordinance when we come back next month.
I guess my suggestion would be, let's take the handbook or procedure manual as it exists right now and change the actual manual so that, like a strike-through, so we know what's being affected. Because this only shows 4 changes, but some of them are very detailed, and when you take out language, it's hard to see where that language went. I don't know, I thought this was kind of difficult. And I have some holidays I want to add too, so, to increase the parking on certain holidays. We only have two times that we increase our parking. And one's John's Pass Seafood Festival, the other one's Memorial Day. Oh, there's 4th of July, never mind. I was going to add Labor Day. I'm trying to get more revenue without penalizing
all of the
my
parking.
retail people in my district.
Well, we can raise parking on Archibald Park and on South Beach and not necessarily raise it in Johns Pass Village or, well, we don't even have it on Madeira Way.
Right.
We can exclude Johns Pass Village from a parking rate increase.
I'd be happy with that.
But, and Commissioner Andrews makes the point, we don't want to live on parking revenue. We do need to generate some money if we're going to fix these parks up like we've talking about, which is part of what the impact fees are for. But if we're wanting to do it now and for the 9/11 and 20th anniversary of that disaster, we need to generate some revenue to do that. I'm fine with that.
And I'm fine with these changes too, if we want to pass this and start with the kind of a halfway cleaned up document.
Yeah, because our labor costs are going up. We're giving raises. We've got to pay for those raises that we're giving somehow. So, particularly on the weekly and monthly, I'm fine with those increases. Those aren't really, they're not affecting residents or even, for the most part, the local people that come over to Madeira Beach.
And I'll just say, when I get back to my desk, I can send you the marked up version. I apologize, I didn't put that in here.
No, I figured it out, but I was wishing that it was just the existing document with just the changes on it. That way I wouldn't have to be going back and forth trying to figure out where some of it was just an awkward way to do it, I thought, that's all. And I do have more ideas on how to add more money to this, but if we make these changes, and then we'll start with this new document, when it comes budget time, I'll bring them up then.
Yeah, that'll get us started. Any other, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, go.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, no, well, I just noticed that our alcoholic beverage one we have in our manual is $700, and we're not charging that. So I guess either that went up or that's something that didn't get on the chart.
I think that's an increase.
Okay, all right. And then, oh, no, I just had a question on,
Weekly and monthly.
Oh, yeah, I was
Parking.
hoping to raise the weekly to $100 and raise the monthly to $200. Or maybe we do 80 and 200 if we don't want to go up too much for the weekly.
That's almost what they'd be paying at the meter at $100.
No, they're only paying for 4 days. I mean, right now at $60, they're paying for 3 days of 8-hour parking, and they're getting 7 days of 24-hour parking.
Well, that's why they're getting the pass.
Well, I don't want to reduce it by 2/3. You know what I'm saying?
Then they'll just end up feeding the meter, which is fine too.
Well, if the weekly pass is $80 and the monthly pass is $200, acknowledges our goal to raise some parking, because I don't think that's ever been raised. And it's a huge despair. I mean, they're really getting a deal. But we would have to take out the language on page 100 about the percentage. It says parking permits may be purchased on a weekly or monthly basis. And then, of course, I marked through it, something, at least 50% or something, for up to, yeah, maybe we just leave that whole phrase out and say, may be purchased on a weekly or monthly basis in the following city parking lots at the fees listed below. That way we're not pigeonholing ourselves to any percentages, because we're giving a lot more than a 50% discount.
Yeah, personally, I'm fine with that. I mean, I think, we actually raised this a couple of years ago because we pointed out the fact that the weekly rate used to be like $20. It was ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for raising it 100 to 200. And, and we'll talk about this at budget time. I'm all for raising our hourly rate on parking. I just want to make sure that what we're doing is, first of all, I really don't like the idea of individual areas. It should be one flat fee just to keep it simple. And, I completely agree with Vice Mayor Price on the fact that some people in Johns Pass are going to be upset. Well, they've just had a record year, and their spring break was great, and people weren't complaining about parking, and they're not going to complain in different areas of the beach. But one universal charge. But what I don't want to see happen, and I just stated this a little earlier about the impact fees. If we're going to raise it 50 or 75 cents, let's earmark it for a project, okay? Let's earmark it for, a parking garage in Johns Pass. Let's earmark it for a high-end dry. But let's have that money set aside so that we're not just jamming into the general fund and, we're watching our wages go up.
Yep.
I mean, we got some homework to do, it's only next month, right? I guess we're starting some preliminary budget hearings. I just saw the paper, and that's great. But I like the idea of, Mr. Mayor, you know my thing about parking. I just didn't want that to be our well, that we always went back to the well just to get parking revenues to add to the general fund. Yeah. I want a specific project that we're taking that 75 cents an hour, putting it towards it, and this way it's going to ease the burden on paying for it, paying our loan on it, and we're not going to be raising the millage rate on a regular basis. Right. That's why we use it, not to just add to the general fund so that we can just keep increasing our budget, because we're the luckiest people on the planet. The fact that we have as much money that comes into parking makes us great. And, we got the hardest job up here, guys, because, we're not the federal government. We can't just go and print more money to make our budget work. We got to kind of work and constrain within what we're doing. And I think that, going forward, I think that's a great idea. But if we take that money, put it towards a project that can generate more money and residual revenue for years and years and years to come, then we're doing our job. We're preparing for 2-3 generations down the road in order to do this the right way. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to see us increase the parking rate by 25 cents, raise the weekly and the monthly pass, and earmark it all towards a high drive storage facility, which is going to generate more revenue for the city. That's what I'd like to see, because we're going to have some money in the piggy bank to do that.
I'm dying to see the report.
Yeah, it should be coming momentarily. I was hoping we would have it this week, but not yet. Maybe by workshop time.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we...
First, let's see if there's any public comment on this.
Sorry.
Is there any public comment? Thank you, Bob. Okay.
I make a motion that we pass ordinance number 2021-12 to amend our fee and collection procedure manual as indicated.
Is there a second?
I'll second. I was waiting on Tom. You look like you were going to say something. No? You're good? Okay.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is 2 APS license, alcohol beverage license application, ABP 2021-05. City Attorney, will you read the ordinance, please?
Okay, there's no ordinance on this one, but I do want to remind the commission that this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and I want to go ahead and read the procedures that we'll go ahead and use, and I'm going to swear in any witnesses. So this is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Board of Commissioners acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider the evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. With that being said, I'd like to swear in anyone that's going to speak tonight on this issue. If you could stand up, raise your right hand, and be sworn under oath. Swear the testimony I'm about to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Thank you, Linda. Go ahead and proceed.
All right. So you probably noticed in this, it had a rather confusing address. I'm going to explain that you didn't figure out what the explanation was there. This is a small 600 square foot unit that faces Fisherman's Alley. And at one point, those of you who've been here a long time will remember there were garages and sheds back there along Fisherman's Alley, as there often are on alleys. And over time, they had become in use as apartments or other little business uses. Most of them have now been demolished. This is the last of the little units that face Fisherman's Alley. But it shares, technically, a property appraiser says it shares a lot with another use that faces 129th Avenue. And to resolve that problem, the post office has given it a different address of 110 Fisherman's Alley. So we put both in case it wasn't clear to anybody in the public which building we were discussing. So what you have to do is review several findings. This particular part of the code is very clear about what those findings have to be. The first is that the extent to which the location and the extent to which the proposed alcoholic beverage request will adversely affect the character of the existing neighborhood. As you know, this is in Johns Pass, which is a major tourism destination, has restaurants, bars, and retailers selling alcohol. That's not unusual. The C1 zoning in this area does accommodate a variety of commercial uses for both tourism and for local needs. What's being proposed here is, what's happened is this building was previously a tarot reader, but back in 2020, the fall of 2020, they came in, changed the use to a convenience store, really small convenience store. It has almost entirely walk-up traffic. There's really not a lot of extra parking immediately surrounded, but it's right down the alley from the big parking lot that's available to the public. So, the extent to which the traffic generated as a result of the location of the proposed alcoholic beverage request will create congestion. As I said, this is a very small unit, and it's a space that's already been in existence. It's already being used as a convenience store. They would have a very small inventory to provide here, and currently are generating practically no traffic at all. They have only one parking space required of them, and the one condition that we added was that they move the gate back a little bit, so if people are pulling in there, it's far enough for them to get the car all the way off into the parking space. It was just pulled up a little bit too far for that. So we don't believe that it's going to generate a lot of traffic. The extent, okay, let's see here, whether or not the proposed use is compatible with the location for which it is proposed. Again, this is consistent with the future land use and with the convenience store uses in its zoning category. Alcohol would not be consumed on the property. Beer and wine package sale is compatible with the use to the location. And specifically, this section asks you to make sure that the property is not located within 300 feet of a church, synagogue, temple, or place of religious worship, a public or private school operated for the instruction of minors, or a youth recreation community center site, and it is not. You also must find whether or not the proposed use will adversely affect the public safety. Beer and wine sold at this establishment would be consumed off-premise. Beer and wine would be complementary to the various snacks and other beach-related items that are sold at the establishment, like they are at other stores. And finally, that no application for review under this section can be considered until the applicant has paid in full all outstanding charges and fees, interest, fines, or penalties. And we can tell you that the applicant has no outstanding fines or penalties owed to the city under this or any section of the code. So the staff recommends approval with the following conditions: that they would move or remove the gate on the side of the property to allow standard parking space measurements for the required customer parking space, and clearly label that parking space as customer parking for the store, and that they would, just to reiterate, that there's no consumption of alcoholic beverage allowed on the property, including at the picnic tables that sit out in front of it.
Your report into evidence?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now's the time for questions from the commission. Does the commission have any questions of Linda?
I have just one. If you turn to page 143 of our packet, and that's the pictures of the convenience store, is that the parking space? If you look at the top picture on page 143, is that the parking space I'm looking at?
It's on the...
Where they moved the gate?
Yes, it's on the side of the building. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just want to make sure
Yes.
I had that right. So they did already remove the gate, it looks like.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Any other questions? There being none?
I have none.
I'm sorry, Mayor? Did you?
No, I have none.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience wanted to speak to this agenda item? Okay. It's back to the commission then for consideration of the application.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yes, there is.
Is there?
Hang on,
Okay. You're worrying me
Okay.
there a little bit, Happy.
All right, I'll go ahead then. I'll make a motion to approve,
Thank you.
the 2 APS licensed alcoholic beverage application, APV 2021-5 for John's Pass Convenience Store, located at 110 129th Avenue East, Madeira Beach.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Just need to make sure that you're including the conditions in the motion, so you're actually moving staff recommendation?
With the conditions specified by Ms. Portal.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next, under unfinished business, RFP 21-01, design, install, maintain, repair, and upgrade services for low-voltage CCTV security camera systems.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. On February 22nd, we published an RFP to have camera systems installed in City Hall, the Rec Center, and the Marina. We received 6 total bids, with ADT being the lowest price, best qualified. Tonight, we're asking that the board approve ADT is the winning bid and allow us to negotiate with them and bring you a contract at the June 9th, I believe, meeting. This was a collaborative effort. It was, I took the lead from the city manager to actually get the RFP on the street, but the building official, Frank DeSantis, was kind of in charge of the City Hall area. Jay can answer any questions for you regarding the rec center, and if you have any general questions kind of about the process or the marina, then I can answer those. And of course, the finance director and city manager weighed in kind of throughout the whole process.
Getting sticker shot. My Ring doorbell works great.
Well, I have a question, Brian, if I could. Do you have the packet that we have?
I do.
Okay. If you go to page 167, 68, 69, it shows, I guess, camera angles of where they're proposing to put the...
Correct.
That's in addition to cameras inside, correct?
Correct. So, right, these are just the outside cameras. So I'll talk specifically to the marina, and then if you want, the others can kind of give you better information about their areas. But we have 9 outdoor cameras, and then 1 indoor. We're actually in discussion with the city manager. We're looking to add a 10th outdoor camera, something out towards 150th Avenue that's pointed towards the gate. So any vehicle coming in, hopefully we can get a good shot of the license plate of them, and then if something happens overnight or something like that, then we also have them leaving. Hopefully we have a good front-on shot there. So that's something we're looking to add for just the marina page.
And I can't tell from this, but it doesn't look like we have a camera on the pumps.
We do. It's actually, I don't know why it's not yellow on the page, but there is. There's one on basically the corner of the ship store pointed out to the fuel dock.
Okay, I was going to say that. And the drive, you just really don't see much of the drive at all. So you've already addressed that.
Yep.
At the entry?
Right. Yeah, so exactly.
And, yeah, because if somebody's driving through, of course, hopefully, of course, we're years away from a high dry storage facility anyhow, but, now that one you've got out at the marina building is pointing towards the pumps, but how about security for the boats that are, on the water going out from the ship store? Does the one for the pumps, does it catch those boats also?
It does. Most of the cameras that we're looking at are going to be up to 180 degree capable, and kind of as we get in with them, we actually do the individual camera placements and, where they're pointing and those kind of things. That's where we'll refine those to make sure we're covering all the areas.
And since I didn't look it up, is this within your budget?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Is the cameras for the marina, is that a prerequisite for the high and dry? Or is this something we need to do?
I don't believe it is specifically for high and dry. I mean, it's certainly something we will have cameras if we do that facility to cover the inside and the areas where there's, excuse me, if we go with the model that kind of the mayor and I have looked at down at Fort Myers, you're certainly going to want cameras where basically the train is that brings the boats out from the inside and puts them in the water. It's an automated system, so you certainly want cameras there.
This was a recommendation from the forensic investigation that was done at the marina.
Okay. And we can add more cameras to this system?
Yes.
We can, yeah.
We can add, we can move, so once that building is built, we can reposition cameras even, into the building or whatever, but, we're still a year or so away from being able to probably break ground on that, so. And did anybody talk about time frame on installation?
We put in the RFP 30 days from contract being signed. We have a tentative meeting scheduled with the ADT guys late next week to have a discussion pending this meeting, of course. And that's something we will get out of them. We have again, the change I just discussed. I know Jay has got a change down at the rec center as well, so basically we've got to go through those and make sure we're getting exactly the specific things we want, and then we'll bring you a contract. The number probably will be slightly different than the one you're seeing, again, because we're adding a camera, for sure, so.
Okay, and is that like buy now, pay later? I'm just messing with you, Ryan. Okay. Rooms to Go has that, you know.
3 years interest free?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions. Anyone else?
Well, when you were talking about a little bit of sticker shock, are you interested in doing the marina and maybe not the recreation area, or
honestly, particularly with all the children we have down at the rec center, I think cameras are a great idea. Okay. That's up for discussion, and Director Hatch is here, but I think we need security there as much as anywhere.
Yeah, I can quickly cover. So he did mention one change. The splash pad is listed in there. We've gotten some advice as of late that is a bad idea. Parents like to change their kids out there. There's a lot of stuff that we don't want to have to be liable for or worry about. So we would be removing a camera. They'd be adding a camera. Hopefully that comes out in the wash.
Same cameras.
I'm sorry?
Same number of cameras, all total.
Yeah, correct. And then, so looking down there now, we have one inside that looks at our cash drawer and then two of our entries. That would increase significantly. We'd have the view of the cul-de-sac. So you mentioned the children. Say a child goes into a vehicle that they're not supposed to be in, we would have access to the vehicle. The front entry will have an additional camera. The stage entry will have an additional camera. Two on the patio, one looking down at the deck, plus the one inside. And then each of the fields, each of the three fields, each tennis court, the basketball court, and the playground will all have a camera on them as well. So,
will we be able to catch tag numbers, Jay?
I'm not sure. That's definitely a good conversation piece for that. So we'll find out on that one. But I know it was discussed in a couple of the conversations. So okay. I will ask that question when we get in there, because that's very important. So, and then an additional camera that's down here underneath where our storage is, so you'll be able to see who's accessing that in and out and everything. So a pretty substantial increase in the eyes on. Plus, it'll help us. You know, we get a lot of phone calls. Commissioner Hudson especially will know about this. If the lights are left on, something else is going to be fixed, but I'll be able to log into the cameras from anywhere at 8:30 and go, oh, look at that, field one, no one's on it. I can turn those lights off. So.
And you can do that from your phone too.
Yes, sir. That's part of the software issue with that. So.
Okay.
It's going to increase a lot of visibility for us and control, which is really big. So.
Okay.
Looks like we'll have instant replay on some of those ball fields. Maybe we can tout that. I'll pay for it.
Any other comments from the commission? Public comment? Bob?
Robert Preston, 425 South Bayshore Drive. I apologize for not reading through the whole contract, but will these cameras work during a power outage?
I know normally there's a battery backup system in the cameras, and we don't have the contract per se as yet. That'll come next month, but that's one of the things that we'll need to make sure. Some of them are on battery power to start with, but I'll have to check and see.
I think that's something that's really important because, you know, a lot of things, you know, outages like during Irma, Johns Pass was out for a week. You know, that's not the marina, but that type of things happen, so it'd be nice to be able to, you know, if it's on temporary power, whatever the case may be, but it should be powered up, when there's outages.
Yeah, well, probably the ones for here will be, our
Most
generator will
definitely.
kick in,
Right.
so,
But we don't have that, you don't have that at the
No,
marina, so
no.
something needs to be addressed there, I think.
thank you.
Good point.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we, allow our marina director to go forward with negotiating a contract with ADT for the cameras described in the RFP.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next, under contracts and agreements, is the Fourth of July fireworks display contract. Director Hatch.
Good evening again. Just bringing back, from our prior discussion, we did have two, proposals from the, firepower displays company that we were looking at. One of them was barge-based, one of them was land-based at the school. Due to our challenges with the barges and the inability to get it at a affordable price, we did negotiate, or not negotiate, but discuss with the school. We do have the next item is the renewal of the joint use agreement with the school. But I did get approval, facility usage agreement yesterday morning. So, we have an agreement to utilize the school for the fireworks, and then with this contract, we would have the fireworks show set up there. So, basically just finalizing what we discussed last time. It's a $30,000 fireworks show, and I think it's approximately 27 minutes. If we pay the whole thing lump sum up front, then it adds, I think it's 24, then it adds another percentage up to 27 minutes. So, we would do it the 4th of July on the evening, and the rain date is the following day. And then we do have an option within the contract to move it to a different date, for any reason. But we have been, as long as I've been here, I know that, myself, my predecessor, and some other folks, we've been known to, rain or shine on the 4th of July. So that's kind of my feeling on it. As long as it's safe, we're going to put them in the air, so.
Okay. Have we used these guys before?
Yes, this is a return to, 3 or 4 years ago. So we have done the previous barge shows with them. So this is and the only difference really is it's a little bit smaller shell, but for that price, we get more fireworks. And, I don't know, I'm sure there's some people that can tell the difference between shell size when it's in the air, but something's blowing up, so people are happy.
Any discussion amongst the commission? Any public comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass the 4th of July fireworks display contract.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is Pinellas County School Board Joint Use Agreement. Director Hatch.
Okay, this is a 5-year extension to the current Pinellas County Joint Use Agreement that we have with between us and Pinellas County for the property located at Bicentennial Park, effectively known as Dog Beach, as well as the school property, soccer fields, the stuff over there. So, there was one change that we had in the contract that mentioned, utilizing your facilities for, seafood festival parking. We asked them to remove that and add any approved, city special event. They didn't blink, so they changed it and approved it. So, with this, we would have another 5 years of partnership with them, which to date has been, a wonderful relationship, so.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any discussion amongst the commission? Any
Good
public?
job. Good job, that's all.
Any public comment? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the 5-year extension for the Pinellas County School Board Joint Use Agreement.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is termination of retainer agreement for lien foreclosure attorney. City Manager Daniels.
Yes, as we discussed at the, I believe it was the workshop meeting when we were looking at at least one of the particular properties on 3rd Street that we've been unable to get the owner of the property to comply with the ordinance, and then just some of the issues that we've had, just to show some of the history of the gentleman that's handling our lien processing through the courts. He came on board with this contract under the previous city attorney that we had, because he didn't have a way of handling those lien prosecutions, and currently our interim city attorney does handle that as part of the functions of his firm. So I wanted to bring forward to, I think it'd be a lot smoother operation if we terminate our agreement that we have, which, in the agreement it says 3 days. I think realistically we need to, we usually deal with a 30-day notice, and I'd like your permission to give the 30-day notice and then hire our city attorney to handle those in the future.
Any discussion amongst the commission? Any public comment? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion for the termination of retainer agreement for the lien foreclosure attorney.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Hodges,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Price,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Thank you.
Next is staff reports.
Actually, I think you have my report in the packet, and I have nothing to add in reference to that. I think Linda wanted to bring something up, but I think because of the long day that she had, I believe she left.
Okay, that's fine.
But
I do have a question. On page 234 to 235 of the Crystal Island update, it says a final walkthrough is scheduled the second week of May. I don't know where we are with the project, but I am getting bombarded by calls and people coming to the store that we haven't completely rectified all of our situations down there with people's yards and getting them back. I know it's a tough hoe to tell somebody that you're going to tear up their yard and then return it to exactly the way it was before. So I understand that point. But are we scheduled for a walkthrough? I mean, it's the second week of May now, right?
yes, actually, it's tomorrow is the walkthrough, and that way we can get an idea of exactly what they have remaining.
Okay.
We've
I misunderstood it. I thought we were gonna sign off on it tomorrow. I was just hoping we weren't gonna release, our, consultants and the construction folks before we get all these things taken care of. Okay.
No, I agree, and in fact, there's 3 of them that I know of that we've been dealing with, and just because of the problems with construction supplies and so forth, we don't even have a quote on those, but we're pushing those individuals to give us a quote so we can back charge the contractor. But there has been some shoddy workmanship that I've seen personally, and to me, if it wouldn't cut the mustard in my house, I wouldn't cut the mustard in any of our residents' homes, so.
So this is like the 3rd or 4th month in a row that I've seen the Madeira Bay project with no change. Are we going to let that, hang out forever, or are we gonna give them a deadline on that?
No, I think we're
The building
working.
was completed and has been rented out for years.
I think we're working to a conclusion finally on the pond in the front. It all involves out of that drainage pond, and the owner did come in and have had it reconfigured, and we're just waiting on their engineer to send us the as-built to show that it's built according to code, and we should be fine.
And I know you explained this to me once before, but under the, on page 229, we have a set of code enforcement with Munis, and then we have a set of code enforcement with our deputies, or with Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. One of those is our employee, and the other one are the 2 deputies, and they're doing the same thing?
Our one that's an employee is more geared to the building side of code enforcement, so if there's an issue with a stop work order, sometimes during the holidays or the deputies aren't available, Holden has been available to go out. Obviously, he can't handle the nuisance complaints as well, and then we are trying to solidify one program that the deputies and Holden can use, so we have one reporting system that helps with our record keeping, and also Mr. Trask when he has to prosecute these cases before the magistrate. So we've been setting up some goals, and it might mean looking at some software, but those are issues that we're actively working on.
So it's a good thing that there were no code compliance issues on the building side of things.
Correct.
All right, I won't ask you that again.
No, that's okay. I don't mind.
When is our next special magistrate meeting?
I think it's the 24th, I can tell you.
2 p.m. still?
Yes.
Okay.
24th sounds right.
Yes, it is the 24th. It begins at 2 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
And lastly, I had a request that I kind of agree with. You see on page 232, the parking chart that we have there that gives us a history over the last, it's very small, but a long time history or several months worth of what our revenue is, and then it has like 5 years showing us at the bottom, how our growth came to be, and we are having a pretty good year. Can we get that same sort of chart with our marina as far as comparing dry storage fees, transient rentals, and marina slip rent, kind of over the last couple of years? I like that. I really like that chart and the fact that we can look back 4 years instantly.
My only recommendation for the vision impaired like
park.
me, turning it
Park.
landscape, but yeah, I think we can look at coming up with something that would be comparable to it.
Yeah, because we already have it, like, detailed out as a separate line item, so I'm presuming it wouldn't be too hard
Right.
to put that in a chart format, okay.
I'll work with Andrew and Brian on that.
And that's account code number 520, 521, and 580. Just a little graph, I guess.
While we're getting things from the marina, I'd like an explanation as to why our new pumps that we're going to be pay at the pump are not pay at the pump.
Oh.
Okay, I'll get that for you.
Because I was led to believe all along the new pumps were going to be to where boaters could come in, fuel up, pay at the pump, and basically not have to go to the ship store, so that we were eliminating the lines that we had all the way out into the intercoastal waterway to get fuel. So I hope there's a good explanation, but if there is, I would think we would have been told that all along. It was disappointing. Okay, next is agenda setting for the May 26th, 2021 workshop. I see we've got the revocation of the city right-of-way used for restaurants and bar parking. I'm sure some of y'all have something you'd like to add to that.
Well, the library budget came out,
Library budget.
so I know we want to talk about that. And I would also like to start a discussion about the plethora of dogs on our beach that I'm hearing a lot from citizens about.
They were actually going out tonight to patrol for that very reason. This afternoon, they went out, I think, at 5:30 or 6 o'clock.
I'm seeing more and more of them off leash. I mean, it's concerning to see them anyway, but then off leash with the birds are nesting now and the turtles are coming up, you know, we really.
They did have one citation over the weekend for an off-leash dog.
Really good.
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just got two things. Number one, the city manager's contract is up in August. It's probably about time we have a little conversation about what we're doing going forward. And the second one is, the public works interviews. I know this is a city manager decision, and I'm not getting involved but if I need to recite the ordinance of why we can look into it. I heard there's a process involved, and I'd like to know what that process is. I told all the candidates were asked 10 identical questions. I'd like to take a peek at that and see if because I know we had a conversation about what we were looking for in a public works director, and I just want to make sure that those were addressed with these candidates. I think that just a little update on how we're going about doing this. I want to make sure, look, we're all in this together. We got to get the most qualified candidates for these jobs, and I've always looked for somebody with local knowledge here that can push our city forward. So I would just like a kind of an update on how we go about doing interviews for our director level positions.
Okay, and I would like to bring up our city engineering firm. I think it's time to take a look at that. I know I've talked to numerous people that have had some issues with that, and I think maybe our engineering firm is getting a little complacent in being, very comfortable in Madeira Beach, and I think maybe it's time we at least take a look at that and see where we want to go with that. I think maybe it's time to shake the bushes and see what's out there.
Mayor, I've got a couple things, if I may.
Yes, sir, please.
One of the things at the workshop meeting, because we're going to have a full meeting with the development agreements and so forth in June, I've talked to Brian about having the check presentations that we do for the grunt hunt and have those at the workshop meeting if that's acceptable to everybody. Those are the checks for the charities that we give money to. And there was also discussion about the sanitation fee study that Andrew has been working on, and so he'll have a presentation on that, and then the marina financials. So I'd like to add those 3 items if you all don't have an objection. Hopefully they won't go too long.
What was the first one?
The first one was the charity checks. Normally after the grunt hunt, we give out checks to certain charities as part of the proceeds, and we do that normally at a regular meeting, but since our June meeting is going to be real busy, I thought it'd be better if we did it during the workshop, if that was okay.
Okay, I've got that. I've got sanitation fee update.
And then the marina financials. Oh, and one other thing, enterprise rental car. Andrew and I want to come back to y'all and look at that. Don't smile too much.
I'm running out of paper.
We'll be brief.
Okay.
I thought we were going to have a short list, and so this one might be able to hold it off. But on one of these workshops, can we discuss public works building, possibly finding a spot on the grounds, maybe where the soccer field is or back on behind it, and then come up with an idea of what type of building they want, so whether you guys agree to it, that area or someplace else, we kind of know what land we need and what type of building we're after.
Yeah, we can get it on the workshop.
It doesn't need to be this one.
Well, I worry about cutting into our rec center with a public works building. Property is so expensive here at the beach right now. We're keeping our eye out on some other property. I would say both here in Madeira Beach and just off the island. I know there's some commercial buildings there near Walmart, this side of Walmart, you know where that Sweet Sage building is there?
Yes.
Right along in there that I was thinking about, but certainly we can bring it up and we can start, just putting feelers out. Maybe we can pick up another piece of property, or even, I think our city manager has some ideas also, so I would say, yeah, we can get that on the workshop and discuss it anyhow.
And the other thing is the latest red tide report there. We're finally starting to see a spot of it happening in Pinellas. So is there something that we learned from the last time that we need to be on the ball and get done quickly?
Well, we probably need to have the fishing boats ready.
And a better way of collecting the fish off our beaches. I think that one real bad year, it just...
Yeah, well,
the staging area was right next to Johns Pass, and not a good idea.
I spoke to Kelly Levy with Pinellas County, I believe that was last week, just to get an update to make sure in the event we do see red tide, the county is on board. They are monitoring daily. They're doing water sampling. This is nothing like what we saw in 2018. There's not a 100-mile radius of dead fish floating out in the Gulf.
Yes.
So they've already talked to the disaster cleanup. They're all on board. They have the equipment ready if needed. So everything is ready in the event that it does happen.
Good.
So I'm on top of that.
And, yeah, thanks very much. We don't know what the effects of that spill in Tampa Bay is going to be.
Send the bill down there.
Yeah, they're watching it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for the record, we were so far ahead of every other community in this area. I mean, if you went down to Reddington, it was a nightmare because they weren't doing it every day and they didn't have those other people. Even in Treasure Island, it was, our beaches, as bad as they were, and it was terrible. I mean, the smell was awful. But we cleaned our beaches every day, and it was,
And the canals. My canal, I was.
Absolutely, we had people out there,
Yep.
you know, paying people to sweep it up, and we did, you know, as good a job. That was a tragedy, but you know, the funny thing is, our waters are so much cleaner now since that happened.
I know.
It's, you know, I don't know. So maybe it's just a natural process, but I commend Megan and everybody that was at Public Works at the time.
Yeah.
Amazing job, amazing.
Okay, City Manager, will you give us direction on the meeting then?
Yes. Starting off with the discussion on the revocation of the use of the city right-of-way for restaurant and bar parking, the pay at the pump, discussion over the city engineering firm, the library budget, dogs on the beach, the city manager's contract, the Public Works Director screening and process, the public, what we would need, so if we did get a piece of property, and the Red Tide report. We'll have an update on that probably through Pinellas County when we meet. Also, the sanitation fee study, the marina financials, and the enterprise rental agreement. And if I didn't mention, we'll probably do that at the beginning if that's okay. We'll do the charity checks. We'll give those out from the Grunt Hunt.
Okay, thank you. Reports and correspondence, anything from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I just got one thing. I was dismayed to find out today that a longtime employee of ours, Kenny Davis, resigned. You know, yeah, it kind of caught me off guard earlier today. So I know a lot of you know him personally on the board, and obviously I wish him well. He's doing well with his businesses, but I would also encourage you to, you know, have a conversation with him. I think he's a really good barometer of what's going on internally here. He knows everybody, and I think he's got some clarity on where we are as a whole. And if we want to know where we're going, we got to know where we are now. So, but I'd reach out to him and say hey, and just thank him for all the hard work. I mean, these beaches are clean because we, you know, way back when they put him on a tractor, and he took it very seriously, and now all of a sudden we're the 9th best beach in the country. So hats off to him, and congratulations, and best in his future endeavors.
Absolutely. I have a quick library report. Just, I don't know what you expect, but this is something that was given to us, and I thought it was interesting. In March of 2021, the number of Madeira Beach residents who physically checked out something from the library was 1,507, up from last year, which was 1,421. That's not the number of books or tapes or anything, it's the number of residents from Madeira Beach.
Actual individuals that check stuff out.
Yep, the number of Madeira Beach patrons. The total number of everyone from, like, county, all cities, people that pay a fee to use our library, tourists, everybody, during that same time was 5,903. So there's a lot of people going in and out of our library. Electronic, I found this interesting, electronic items that were checked out. I don't have this broken down by city, but for the year-to-date total, and they're on the same fiscal year as we are, there were 9,923 audiobooks, e-books, and videos checked out. I mean, downloaded to phones or laptops, and 1,646 digital magazines read. So that's growing, obviously, and, it's one of the things that the library is working on, the new computers and the new setup in there. I just think it's gonna be great.
I was surprised to see that 45,000 for books in there again this year. Are they actually spending that kind of money at buying new books?
I don't know, and obviously we will all be discussing that.
That and
Yeah.
the DVDs and,
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
that's for another day. Anyone else?
Did we happen to, the rocks and the landscaping, did we ever come to a consensus or a?
That came kind of after the meeting, because that happened like Friday, and then our meeting was on Monday.
Okay.
I did bring up, hey, this is probably going to be a hindrance to our mowing your lawn. And they said, well, if it's too much of a hassle, we can have it done there, but if you guys could do it, all they got to do is walk around with a weed eater. But I don't, they weren't even done with the project yet, and I do want to talk to you about that.
Okay.
The library did say, well, if you all can't do it, we'll get someone to do it. They don't want to remove the rocks, I know that much.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Would have been really simple just to tape it off like they did the other day, but they're nice rocks.
There's a lot of them.
They're very nice rocks.
But the landscaping is looking really nice, you got to admit.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
That's it.
I guess
Oh,
that's
and
all.
by the way, Dave, great photograph up there on our wall of shame.
Yeah,
No, that's
really.
it.
Okay. City Attorney, do you have anything for us?
I just wanted to remind you that I'm going to be on vacation from the 21st to the 29th. All the meetings are covered. Either one of my partners will be doing it, covering the meeting, or Rob Eschenfelder will be covering the meetings. Everything is covered, but I want to let you know that I'm taking my annual leave for one week.
Thank you. Again, this is the third annual leave you've had this year, isn't it, Tom?
Really?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just one other thing too. I think we referred to it on that, our city clerk had passed out the dates. We worked with Andrew, we worked with staff. I think we do have 5 Saturdays we have 5 Wednesdays in June, and we moved the workshop meeting to the last Wednesday in June. So we have a little bit more time to do some of the budgetary numbers and also make sure that the staff knows that they're off during that period. So if they need to take a vacation, that's the time to do it.
Okay. City Clerk, do you have anything for us?
I do. I learned this week that a candidate seminar will be taking place in Clearwater on Friday, and I think the mayor at the city of Seminole is putting that on, and so I'm going to attend that and see if it's something that we would like to bring here before our qualifying period this year.
Okay, good.
Which is very important to me, to find that right seminar.
Sounds good.
Do we have any vacancies on any of the advisory boards that we're?
We have one vacancy on the Planning Commission and one vacancy on the Civil Service Commission.
Okay. And that's out there, and
Yes, ma'am.
should we do an email blast or something?
Okay. Having no other business, this meeting is adjourned.